Tánaiste, I've spoken to you previously in regard to the opportunity there is to provide much needed additional accommodation for our army. The most modern army barracks in Europe, which opened in 1990, was unfortunately closed in 2012. As you know, Dooney is centrally situated in the border region. The next army barracks are to the east, Frank Aiken Barracks in Dundalk and Finner Camp in County Donegal. So there's a large tract of border area that does not have an army barracks. And I believe, in view of the geopolitical situation and the security assessment, that you must give urgent consideration to the reopening of Dooney Barracks, firstly as a forward operating base and then as a full army barracks. Thank you, Cahirley.
Thank you, Deputy, and I know you've raised this before, and as you know, the Commission on the Defence Forces was established on foot of a commitment in the Programme for Government and the Government decision in December 2020, which also agreed its terms of reference and membership. The report was published on the 9th of February 2022, and the Commission undertook a significant body of work encompassing wide-ranging terms of reference, and it recommended significant changes for the Defence Forces and defence provision in Ireland. It covers high-level Defence Forces structures, defence capabilities, organisation, culture and human resources, the Reserve Defence Force and funding. In July 2022, the Government approved a high-level action plan in response to the Commission report. As part of this, approval was given for a move over a 6-year period to a level of Defence Forces capability equivalent to level of ambition 2, as set out in the capability framework devised by the Commission, which will entail funding increases to reach a defence budget of circa 1.5 billion by 2028 through the annual estimates process. Implementation structures have been put in place, including an implementation oversight group and a high-level steering board to support the implementation of the overall transformation programme required to implement recommendations from the report of the Commission on the Defence Forces. And there are a number of recommendations contained in the report which may impact on the structure of the Defence Forces, including that the structure of the Army be reviewed, and in that context the disposition of units across the Defence Forces may be considered. The recommendation that the structure of the Army be reviewed was identified as an early action in the high-level action plan. However, no decisions on the future disposition or location of Defence Forces formations, installations and personnel have been made at this time, and as I said earlier, military authorities have established an Office of Army Force Design which will undertake the significant work required to give effect to these recommendations. Whilst there were no plans, to be frank with the Deputy, to consider the Dooney site in Cavan as a forward operating base, it is something that I will discuss further with military leadership and with my department. It's currently used, I think, by Cavan, Monaghan and Education and Training Board. But I think it's given the wider recruitment issues, it's something that I will reflect on.
Thank you, Tánaiste, for your reply, and I welcome the fact that this will be considered. Tánaiste, the ETB only used part of that site. Again, I cannot emphasise strongly enough, it was the most modern barracks in Europe, officially opened in 1990. And I represented Cavan Monaghan during the very bad days when we were in the era of the troubles in this island. And we can never underestimate the important work that was carried out in our army barracks and by our army personnel in dealing with very, very difficult situations. And again, unfortunately, paramilitarism hasn't gone away entirely. We have a long land border. And a person would need no military experience to see clearly on a map that there's a lacuna there in regard to installations, military installations on this island along the border. Finner Camp in the northwest, Frank Aiken Barracks in the northeast, and nothing in the central border region. Tánaiste, I know from interacting with army personnel in Dooney over the years the importance of their work, what the knowledge that they accrued, how important it was when we faced diseases, animal disease and that, where there was a virtual close down in movements across the border, etc. So, Tánaiste, you have a ready-made military facility there that could be put back to use in a very short period of time. And again, Tánaiste, in response to my colleague Deputy Robert Troy's questions, you spoke about the structure of the Defence Forces. You also spoke that by 2028 we need to have 11,500 enlisted personnel. They will need accommodation.
Well, first of all, I thank the Deputy again for raising this issue. Obviously, the focus has been on recruitment and enhancing recruitment. And I take on board what you're saying about the physical quality of the barracks in Cavan. So, look, I will make sure that your advocacy for the barracks as a forward operating base will be fed into the process. But I don't want to, I think that's something that I will do, and will revert back to the Deputy.
Thank you, Tánaiste. And again, we discussed in this House, Cavan had a very long and proud army tradition. There has been stronger recruitment in areas where there's an army barracks. Unfortunately, we're losing that attachment, that number of young people going into the army that we had in the past. And I know that you met some local members of the Permanent Defence Forces, good friends of my own, who were in the Golan Heights recently. We still have an army tradition, but it's not as strong as I would like it to see. And I think to improve recruitment and retention, another army barracks, taking in personnel from its immediate catchment area, and that would help to boost necessary recruitment. And again, we all want to see 11,500 enlisted by 2028. That's only 4 years away, and we're at 7,500 at the moment. So, Tánaiste, our army will need 1,000 new recruits each year, and they would have to have proper accommodation. You have that proper accommodation in Cavan Town, in Dooney Nail, and I would appeal to you to at least start off with it being established as a forward operating base. Thank you, Cathaoirligh.
Yeah, look, the Deputy has advocated strongly. I don't want to raise expectations either. I mean, there's lots of the consolidation of barracks created their own, in terms of operational readiness, deployability of the Defence Forces personnel. Military would argue it has improved upon that. The consolidation improved that. But there is your point about recruitment your point about the link between recruitment and military tradition through the presence of a barracks is well made, and should not be dismissed. And it's something I've picked up myself. One only has to, when you're meeting with a deployment, going to UNIFIL, as I've met quite a number, and you go through where people are from, there's a very strong correlation between the presence of barracks and a military tradition, a family tradition, community tradition, and I think it's an important point. It is something I'm conscious of. People might worry about any new venture to set up a new base in the barracks such as Cavan in terms of operational efficiencies and so on like that, but I think the point you've made is well made, though. And in fact, when we're looking at the naval service, and I speak as a Corkman, as the Hull Boland is in base, but there's an argument where you've 1.5 million people living in a capital city. That maritime naval tradition hasn't existed to the same extent, but you have to balance all of the variables.
Okay.